Can we determine today the potential loss of tomorrow and change our future? I think everyone in this room would agree that yes, we can. We know that risk modelling offers us the crystal ball to predict all of our potential futures. And we know that we have many policy levers at our hands that enable us to change our future. And I'm very pleased to host a session with UNDP on this particular topic to demonstrate how we can change our future. So if we look back in history, here's a plaque at the side of a cathedral in Manila commemorating the 3 times that this cathedral was destroyed by earthquake in the 16th and 18th century. There was also a cyclone in there. But the city of Manila is vastly different today as it was in the 18 or 1600s. So looking at this evolution of risk really is quite frightening in many ways. And some of the modelling presented in our session will talk about what does this actually mean for the city of Manila. Similarly, we'll talk about what does it mean for other cities around the world. How is this changing exposure and vulnerability driving these risk trajectories upwards and upwards in developing countries? And what can we do today to change that risk? So we need to stop thinking about risk as something that's static. Risk is changing because our hazards changing, is changing because our exposure is changing, and we're making decisions today that are really affecting the vulnerability of structures. To illustrate from some slides I've stolen from another session, we can model what it means. We can see that in Bangladesh, the flood risk over the next 50 years is going to change. The flood is going to increase quite dramatically. Similarly, the socioeconomic conditions are changing very fast. So what does this mean? Changing hazard alone increases the annual average loss 3 times. Exposure vulnerability 11 times. Combined, 22 times. But we can change our future. My grandfather on his first day of high school in New Zealand watched his school collapse around him with a magnitude 7.8 earthquake in the Hawke's Bay. 80 years later, my mother was terrified when my brother was in Christchurch during that same event. But what was the difference 80 years made? The New Zealand government made a decision to ban the construction of unreinforced masonry. Fairly small decision, big impacts. Save lives, save buildings, save livelihoods. So we can change our future. It's about identifying those small things that we can do now. And what does risk information have to do with all of this? We know what best practice risk information looks like. Here is a crowdsourced word cloud describing what people consider to be best practice risk information. And many of the adjectives have been described here today. Open, local, dynamic, comprehensive, targeted, useful. They're not really that surprising. But in some ways they are, and we need to do much better to make sure our risk information into the future actually starts to live up to some of these adjectives. Risk information for a purpose. Ultimately, producing risk information for community preparedness is vastly different to financial protection, but sometimes we're not actually considering the decision maker at the start. Therefore, we also need to consider open data practices. Make ones, use many. Producing information is incredibly resource intensive. We need to make it fit multiple purposes and be dynamic. Open data offers us that opportunity. Promoting new innovations. OpenStreetMap was first presented at the first Understanding Risk conference. This is an example of the Sri Lankan government. This is the difference of a ground motion prediction equation that makes on a hazard model. If you don't know what you're making that decision based on, you can make a big mistake. Risk communication. Annual average loss is very exciting to many people in this room, but at a community level, inundated or not inundated is actually what they need to know. So we need to target our messages. Our panel on Tuesday features a lot of this wealth of experience of people who've been working in developing countries trying to produce risk information that matters. Experience from Peru, Morocco, Jordan, Turkey, featuring the case study from Nepal, and the experience from Papua New Guinea and the Philippines. People who have worked on the ground in developing countries with decision makers to produce information that will make a difference and will change our future. Thank you.